to the kingdom. Cheers. A toast to the king.
You elect will drink wine new with Yahweh Shai. You elect. As of right now, we say hopeful elect. You elect of Israel out there will drink wine new with our Lord Yahweh Shai in his Father's kingdom, which is going to be the kingdom of heaven here on this planet Earth once Yahweh Shai returns. When our Lord comes back, one of the first things he's going to do is have a toast with his men. He's going to have a toast with his men, those that stood stiffly for his name and his Father's name. Let's read this one more time. Matthew chapter 26, verse 29. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine, which is wine, which is made from grapes, as you know. And our Lord, he loves to drink, man. That's something that our Lord took pleasure in when he was here on this planet Earth. He's not going to do it anymore until he returns to do it with you. Showing just how much he loves his elect, man. He's not even going to drink until he does it again with you. I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. So what a moment that's going to be, man. And you can only imagine the quality of wine that's going to be. Our Lord Yahweh Shai, he has access to different things that we don't even know about, man. Access to different grapes you don't know about. Has access to an entirely different quality of life that we don't know about. But he's going to reveal it to you. He's going to give it to you when he returns. Now, you have what's called a loyal toast. A loyal toast. I'm going to read this real quick. A loyal toast is a salute given to the sovereign monarch or head of state of the country in which a formal gathering is given. In this case, the sovereign monarch or head of state would be Yahweh Shai. He's our sovereign monarch. He controls everything, man. But guess what? He's also going to extend that power to you elect. He's going to share that power with you. A loyal toast is a salute given to the sovereign monarch or head of state of the country in which a formal gathering is given, or by expatriates of that country, whether or not the particular head of state is present. In this case, the Lord will be present. So you're not going to have someone speaking for him giving a toast. He's going to host the toast. He's going to be there, man. We're living in a time we're going to meet Yahweh Shai. You're going to meet him face to face, which is proof also that we have to be changed. We can't meet the Lord like this. He's going to change you. He's going to crown you, and he's going to toast with you. Now let's read some more. It says, it is usually a matter of protocol at state and military occasions and a display of patriotic sentiment at civilian events. The toast is usually initiated and recited by the host, which will be Yahweh Shai, before being repeated by the assembled guests in unison.
To the kingdom. Cheers.
Sometimes when Akim are among each other, we'll do little small toasts. Brothers may be like La Yasharala, holding up cups. But imagine the Lord himself hosting it, man. And we join in. And I was reading something else, and pretty much they said in order to have what they call a loyal toast, you would use wine. That's the beverage of choice. And once again, our Lord, he's coming back, and we're going to see him with all that power, man. But he's going to extend that power to you. Now, reading life, or until abdication, in this case for life. And therefore, the head of state of a monarch may exercise the highest authority and power in the state. Or others may wield that power on behalf of the monarch. And that will be you joint heirs. You different men that are going to reign with the Lord, man. Usually a monarch either personally inherits the lawful right to exercise the state's sovereign rights, often referred to as the throne or the crown, or is selected by an established process from a family or cohort eligible to provide the nation's monarch. In this case, the Heavenly Father Yahweh himself selected his son Yahushua. And once again, when our Lord returns, he's going to wield that power to you elect as well. Once again, he's going to change you, he's going to crown you, and he's going to have a toast with you. A kingly toast.
To the kingdom! Cheers! A toast with the king! Raise your glasses, my friends. A toast with the king! A toast with the king! Raise your glasses, everyone. A toast to a prosperous future! To the king! To our glorious future! To the victors, blow the spoils! Raise your glasses! Cheers! Raise your chalices to the golden age of our kingdom! A toast to the king!
All right. Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to which younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners who came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shai. All right. And what we're going to get into this morning news and prophecy, discussing war, politics, and prophecy, how everything tie in together, and I want to start off with this precept and expound on a few things. And I got a few videos lined up, to deal with all three, war, all right, the politics and prophecy. Now, when you go here to the book of Sirach, chapter 5 and verse 15, it says, "Be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or a small," So as we look at prophecy happening, there's small things happening, there's big things happening, and in between, and we look at all these things, man. And different brothers got different lots, different brothers, have different gifts and specialties and expertise, within different things. That's why the Lord has a body, where everything works together to where the church, all right, has the whole picture of everything that's going on, just like you have the gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay. You will see that there's different accounts, All right, you see that there's the same accounts, all right, but they're expressed differently because they're coming from different viewpoints, you know, but they're speaking about the same thing. They're speaking about the life of Yahushua. Okay, some gospels have more accounts, you know, more Yahushua's sermons, more of his miracles. Some accounts, all right, are not within every gospel. Okay, but they're all part of the overall, gospel of Yahushua, his life, his story. Okay, and they all, mesh together. And that's what you have amongst the body. As the Lord has raised up watchmen in these latter days. Okay, every watchman is on a different part of the tower, but we're watching for the same thing. So some brothers see different things. All right, different angles. Okay, some brothers might be a little high on the tower, so they see a little further out, but it's all needed, for the overall, all right, picture, all right, as far as prophecy, So we get into these things, and brothers, have been going in, brothers have been on point, as far as, how, the Spirit has brothers on point, as far as how brothers been going in, starting with our apostles and elders, which, they set the tone, for diligence, for being thorough, for being, accurate with, the doctrine, the information, they set the precedent for that, So as we go into these things that's happening, we go into, all right, a lot of different angles because there's a lot of moving parts. Okay. And we have to become skillful in knowing what to dismiss, and what to engage in. All right. And what tells us, all right, what to dismiss and what to engage as far as information is prophecy. If it's aligned with prophecy, man, So going back into the precept, it says, be not ignorant of anything. And this is Sirach 5:15. Be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or small. Okay. Because it's all building up to prophecy, man. Okay. Because like I've said before, you have what's happening on a day-to-day basis. Okay. As far as this war. Okay. That's on the bottom. And then you have the politics, okay, of what's going on, the elites and what they're doing. All right. How they're trying to manipulate this war for their agenda. And then on top of that, you have prophecy, which everything is under the umbrella of prophecy. Okay, what the elites are doing, all right, and the day-to-day, okay, the day-to-day development of this war. Now, what we have to understand, let's go here, within the ground level, the day-to-day of the war, there's a lot of misinformation, and it can be turned to a distraction, all right, and a tool of disinformation. Okay. Now, when we say that the war, all right, is staged or that the war is a distraction, well, the actual war itself is prophesied. Okay. But how the media is trying to spin it, the reason for the war. Okay. And then a lot of disinformation that comes out surrounding the war, then it can become a distraction. Okay. If we don't have an understanding of prophecy, man. Okay. Because there's things happening prophetically on the ground level as for the day-to-day war. There's things happen prophetically. So when we say it's staged, we know that the elites, all right, on top, they're manipulating, okay, this war to set the reset the global, all right, order. Okay, the global economy, the global government. Okay, so they're wanting to manipulate this war for their agenda. Okay, but eventually, what's happening on the ground, okay, this war is gonna surpass what the elites want to do, and it's gonna fulfill prophecy up here, and it's gonna X out everything that the elites trying to do. If that makes sense, I hope that makes sense. All right. So just saying it again, the things that's happening on the ground level, okay, is gonna keep escalating, and it's gonna surpass, okay, what the elites want to do, and it's gonna fulfill what the Lord want to do for prophecy, because this is the war that removes Esau from power, and I hope that makes sense, So if it makes sense, Bob Kashah put a 1 on the comment board. If what I just say it makes sense, before we go further into it, because we're gonna, touch from every angle, You know, if it don't make sense, put a 2. If it makes sense, put a 1 on the comment board. What I just said, you know. But okay, come. Because it's a lot of moving parts, you know. So we're gonna try to be concise as possible, okay, with the information, you know, and not cause any confusion. You know, the last thing I want to do is cause, all right, confusion. So, okay, come, all right. So when you deal with what's happening on the ground, you know, on the ground level, you know, okay, come, yeah, Yahweh Shema, while Yahweh Shema Shai is making sense, okay. So we're gonna go a few things. We're gonna talk about some things and how it all tie in together, and it meets, okay, at prophecy. Now, when you go to misinformation, which the day-to-day events that's happening with this war is going to be surrounded by a lot of disinformation, okay, and the disinformation becomes a distraction, okay, but the war itself plays into prophecy. But the disinformation that they're going to push and the propaganda that they push around the war, okay, becomes a distraction, you know, and it becomes a tool of distraction. So disinformation is false or inaccurate information deliberately created and spread to deceive, manipulate, or harm, often aiming to influence public opinion, damage reputations, or gain political economic advantage. Unlike misinformation shared unintentionally, disinformation is malicious. Common synonyms include propaganda, fake news, hoax, and manufactured content. So you're going to see a lot of disinformation surrounding the day-to-day of this war. And it's meant to cause confusion. It's meant to get you to, all right, disengage from what's going on, you know, to make you look at this thing as nothing. But this war that's happening ain't nothing. We can't discard the war, the day-to-day what's happening in the war because of all this disinformation. You see, we just got to know how to filter out the disinformation, which we stick to what the scriptures say. All right. Now, let's discuss. Now, didn't the scriptures say that the least of the flock shall draw them out? Didn't that happen? That's prophecy. That's not disinformation. Didn't the scriptures say that Iran, all right, the Carmanians will come forth like a wild boar with great power? So, what we see Iran, how they're performing in the war, that's not disinformation. That's prophecy. Okay, didn't it say that those Gulf Arab states will begin to join Iran? Okay, and we see that transitioning happening now. Okay, then the scriptures say Russia was going to be a guard to particular nations. Isn't Russia doing that, being a guard? And Iran was one of those nations. Okay, and Russia is providing with a lot of weaponry. Okay, intelligence. Okay, within this war. Okay, so that's prophecy. That's not disinformation. You see, and so forth and so on. All right, then the scriptures say that America's ships will flee. When you go to Isaiah 43 and 14, you read in the NLT, it said American ships shall flee, which American Navy has been irrelevant, you know, this whole time. Okay, so how do you dispel disinformation? Well, you stick to the prophecy. Okay, so we see things happening. We're like, okay, we filter everything through prophecy. Okay, this is prophecy. This ain't disinformation. You see? So the thing is to use prophecy to filter out disinformation, because what's happening on the ground level, okay, is going to surpass what the elite's agenda is, and it's going to X their ass out. Okay, and it's going to usher in the return of Yahushua. Okay, so the elites are going to be on the side doing their thing. You know, they have a window to where the Lord is going to allow them to manipulate, okay, this war to bring about, you know, their agenda. But when they get to a certain point, making the MOTB mandatory, that's when, all right, this war is going to surpass what they want to do, all right, and it's going to fulfill the will of the Lord. Okay, so let's deal with the ground level first. I got a quick video, okay, just to deal with what's going on the ground level. Okay, so let's go here because what we seeing now, there was a ceasefire, okay, between America and Iran. Now, what we have to understand, you have dealing with the small hats and Hezbollah. Now, you hear about these ceasefires with the small hats in Lebanon. Now, Lebanon is the official government, okay, of Lebanon. When they say the ceasefire with Lebanon, that's not talking about, all right, Hezbollah directly, because Hezbollah is a militant group, okay, that's occupied in Lebanon, okay. So you'll hear about this ceasefire between the small hats and Lebanon. Well, the Lebanese government are puppet governments to the west. Okay, Hezbollah, okay, is a resistance fighting military, okay, an extension of Iran in Lebanon, so they don't answer to the Lebanese government. Okay, they're operating in Lebanon as a resistance to the small hats expansion. Okay, in North Israel and southern Lebanon. Okay, that's why they always clashing on that border. Okay, that's the sideshow. Okay, that's not the main event. The main event is America, okay, and Iran. Because that's going to be the conflict that's going to draw in these major powers. Okay, so when you hear about ceasefires with these small hats in Lebanon, that's just a little sideshow. There's nothing to pay a lot of attention to. Okay, but the main event, the heavyweights, all right, that's in the ring is America and Iran. So for these last 2 weeks, there's been a ceasefire. Oh, let me cue this video up real quick. All right, so for the last few weeks, there's been a ceasefire, okay, and so-called talks or negotiations. Well, neither side is going to agree on anything, okay, because since February 28, what has happened, Iran has taken control of the Strait of Hormuz, okay, so the West and their media, they play this game of the Strait of Hormuz closed, it's open, it's closed, it's open, which it was never closed. All right, Iran has just taken control because there's still oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, but it's according to, all right, the IRGC, the Iranian government and military. Okay, so you still have certain nations that's getting their oil, like China, Pakistan, so forth and so on. Nations that are leaving the dollar, which that's where you get into the level above the day-to-day. All right, the politics, the elites, they want the dollar to collapse. Okay, so just to sum it up, all right, Iran having control of the Strait of Hormuz works in our favor because that still chokes out the oil supply that's going to the global market because everything is not getting through. All right, those GCC nations, okay, most of their oil is not getting through. Okay, and the elites can run with that narrative, okay, and push for an energy crisis lockdown. Okay, so as long as, because it ain't going back to what it was before February 28th, when the Strait of Hormuz was just an open sea lane to where these ships came and go. They didn't have to pay no toll. They just came and went. Energy just flowed freely through. Okay, but now it's being choked out. That's not going to change. Ain't no going back. All right, because they talking about the straits open going back to before February 28th. That's never going back to that. Okay, Iran is not going to turn loose, okay, the control of the Strait of Hormuz. They'll never do that. Okay, I'll be extremely surprised if they did. All right, but what we have now with the Strait of Hormuz, all right, in control, all right, by Iran, well, you have this narrative of an energy crisis lockdown. Okay, so whether they get to fight, whether they're fighting or not, the strait is still closed. So that narrative is still in play, okay, of the energy crisis lockdown. All right. Now, as far as militarily, what both sides are doing, they're just gearing up for another round. Okay, this is gonna be round 3. You know, we talked about this, the 12-day war, that they just went to their corners, 7 months, 7 months and some change. They came back out fighting again. They locked up again. Okay. Next time they went 40, a little bit over 40 days. Okay. They got another ceasefire. All right. And both sides are arming up. So these deals are nothing. They're just using these deals, all right, to reposition themselves for this third round. Because they're gonna lock up again, and it's gonna be more intense this time. Okay. The 12-day war was just between the small hats and Iran going back and forth at each other. Okay, then America came in at the end. All right, they created an off-ramp. They went to their corner. All right. This time it was Iran going at the small hats and America, and getting these other nations, these GCC nations in the region involved as well. So we were regional this time. Okay. So now this ceasefire, everybody in their corners, and you got all these nations in the background position themselves to get involved too. Turkey is in the cut getting ready, okay, to join up with Iran and Russia, okay, because these small hats are saying that Turkey is next, okay. So that's activating what? Prophecy, Ezekiel 38, okay. So when they come back together again, it's going to be more intense. All right. And don't be surprised if there's more nations that get directly involved. Okay. So this is going to, the war is going to continue to escalate. Okay. That's all it can do. Ain't no going backwards. Okay. How things were before February 28th, that's gone. It can never go back to that. Okay. Because we have to understand, it was so much damage done. Okay. In their region. All right. What Iran was able to do in that short amount of time, they destroyed decades of military buildup. So a 2-week or month break ain't gonna bring back decades of what was destroyed in 40 days. Okay, so it ain't never going back to before February 28th. The only thing they can do now is escalate, and it's the Most High that got them on this escalation level. Okay, but this ceasefire, all right, as long as the Strait of Hormuz is in the control of Iran, then they can run with the narrative of an energy crisis lockdown, okay, which that works in our favor. So everything is working exactly how it needs to be. So let's play this real quick, all right, just to show you that they're building up for round 3, okay? So let's play this.
Yeah, especially when those manifesting problems start occurring here and shelves are empty. Prices for what's there is more than they can afford. Obviously, gasoline will be going up to the roof. That's when I think you're going to start seeing some of that stuff. But let me ask you, just kind of on the near term here, I showed you this chart earlier that showed that we have more naval power in the region than we had even at the start of the war. There's more air power. We've been restocking missiles. And let's take a look at, this is what happened during the first 40 days. You see these are the attacks by U.S. and Israel against Iran. And so there was a considerable amount, caused lots of damage, at least anything above ground. And then you look at what the Iranians were able to do in response. And so it's obviously at a much lower rate, but it was sustained all the way through in large part because.
And if a brother could post that, I think that's Psalm 55 and 21, how war was in his heart. You know, maybe 55, 21, 22 in that area. A brother can post that.
Because of the underground facilities, etc. And yet that limits its stuff. This is what it had on our aircraft alone. All these are losses, either destroyed or damaged, etc. So the question is going to be now, if we go in, and President Trump is good on his word on this, and the one thing he has been good on is using military power. If this is true and there is no meeting at all, much less a successful one, then he goes back to the military. What can we expect then out of this additional firepower that's different from what we saw the other side or the first half?
Tone, why should people join us on April 23rd through the 25th for the AI Advantage Summit?
Because I know you know Well, first of all, I'm not in on the discussions and I'm not sitting in the war room and I haven't seen any plans. I don't expect to receive any calls to inform me. So the best that I can tell you is that we will do what we did the last time, only we will do it with greater gusto. We will pick some new targets on the assumption, and that's my assumption, that based upon the intelligence studies of the last round, they're finding some new targets to attack. And you remember that the key to all of these air and missile campaigns is very much the same. Somebody walks in and says, okay, boss, I've been back over these targets. We've gone through them. We put them through AI. We've analyzed them. We're confident now that we've got the right set of targets. In addition to most of the ones we hit before, we've now got these new ones. We think this is the answer. In other words, you put enough rounds out there, eventually you're going to hit something that counts. I don't think that works, and I've seen that happen before.
So, this military buildup, which we knew from the beginning, they were putting all them aircraft carriers out there and, moving all this military hardware that they were staging for an attack, and they did. All right. So what they're doing now, they're setting back up again. They're posturing themselves again for another round. Okay. Because all these peace talks, these are just, okay, this is going back to, this is just propaganda. This is political theater. Okay. Those talks hold no weight. They have, all right, no one is discussing anything in good faith. They're just killing time to build up militarily. China and Russia and North Korea, can't forget them. China, Russia, and North Korea is scrapping Iran down. Okay. America and the small hats are trying to posture themselves, man, which the small hats, they catching hell with Hezbollah. Like I say, they the little sideshow to the side. They done got caught up in, it's like a bar fight, and your homeboy, he, he getting into it and he got his own little fight going on to the side. He catching hell. He can't even really help you like that, So that's the small hats in this right now. So that's them locked up with Hezbollah. So let's go here. This is the brother GMS Des Moines. It says the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. All right. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Yeah. So they're having these, they're pushing like they're all about these peace talks, man. But no, war is in their heart. And the Lord got war in their heart. Okay. Because the Most High ready to wrap this nigga up. Okay. This war, this is going to be the war that packed these Edomites up, man. Okay. Like I say, it's going to surpass all the agendas of the elites. And the Lord's going to allow the elites to start pulling things off on the left-hand side as far as their new world order to get to a certain point. Then this war just going to shoot past, okay, what these devils got going on and wipe their ass out, man. Okay. So they're discussing, all right. And also too, it was something else I wanted, what there was, it was a precept, another precept I wanted. All right, dealing with this build up. It probably come back to me. I'm gonna get this, but we'll segue. But just to know, they're just gearing up for another round. You can stop listening to all the talks, and JD Vance is now leaving the White House to go to Ishnabal and all. You ain't gotta worry about that. All right, them niggas just talking. Okay, war in their heart. Okay, these niggas just killing time. Everybody, both sides, arming back up. Okay, and they gonna lock up again. Okay, and this time it's gonna be, oh yeah, that's what I wanted. Birth pains. Let's get that second Ezra 16 and 37 through I think 39. Okay, because it's just like birth pains. The contractions, they get more intense as you get closer and closer to the actual birth for the child, where the contractions become more frequent and more intense. Okay, because it went from a 12-day war, all right, to a 40-day war. Okay, there's more intense. So now the next one gonna be more intense than, all right, the last one. Okay, just like the birth pains of prophecy. We're in the birth pains of prophecy, man. Because what you have breaks between those contractions, right? You know, there's a break between, okay, and then they come back. You see, there's a break and then they come back, man. So this is the birth pains of prophecy we're seeing. All right, so this is St. John chapter 8, verse 44. This is from the brother. All right, ancients knew, why don't we? St. John 8:44 says, ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. All right, when he speaks, okay, when he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it, man. Okay, so the devil is just a liar. There's no truth in him. Okay, he's a murderer. He's all about unaliving, you know, and these devils, at least they have a depopulation agenda anyway, man. You know, so they're all about throwing these nations into a war to depopulate, you know. You see? So it's gonna come a time, all right. See, the war working in their favor for the most part, but it's gonna come a time when this war doesn't work in their favor. Okay, there's only so much they're gonna be able to manipulate. All right, because this is the war that ends their ass, man. So let's segue from there. I found this is pretty neat. Now, it goes into the effect, okay, of the Strait of Hormuz being choked. Okay, let's go here. All right, now he speaks with a perspective as if it hasn't happened, if it do happen. You see, but we're in it. It has happened already. You know, so he's speaking from a perspective of, if it happened. Okay, well, we know, well, right now it has happened. Okay, so let's play this. And then the effects that he speaks about, it goes beyond that, because those nations that this oil is shipped to are going to be heavily affected, man. I'm real interested to see what we're going to look like in June. It's June. Yeah. Well, I'm real interested to see what we're going to look like in June, man, if this continues. Well, when this continues on, man, because like I said, I'd be extremely surprised, all right, if it goes back before how it was February 28th. All right, so let's get this real quick, and then we play the video. 2nd Esdras 16:37 said, behold, the plagues draw nigh and are not slack, as when a woman with child in the 9th month, bringing forth a son with 2 or 3 hours of her birth, great pains can pass about her womb, which it says, all right, which pains when the child cometh, all right, they slack not a moment. So this is why every day there's something, every day there's something, man. All right, and as we get closer to the birth, okay, of this, tribulation, this great tribulation in the earth, okay, and the birth of our kingdom, we're going to see, these events become more intense and more frequent, man, to the point it's going to get to where they don't slack a moment. Okay, and we're building up to that time. Even so, right, said, even so shall not the plagues be slack to come upon the earth, and the world shall mourn, and sorrow shall come upon it on every side, man. And this is a squeeze. All right, this is going to be a global squeeze, this energy crisis, okay, lockdown, okay, that they're telegraphing. Well, this is going to be a global squeeze on every side. Okay, it's going to squeeze people on every side as this thing continues, man. All right, and that's all within the prophecy of the Lord, because the Lord wants famine. The Lord wants civil unrest. Okay, the Lord wants mass disruptions and blackouts, and you see, the Lord wants these things, man. Okay, because this is all part of the Lord's judgment. So let's go. Let's play this real quick.
One military strike, one critical choke point. 7 countries go dark. Not recession, not slowdown. Total collapse. Because while most nations can survive an energy shock, there's a group that literally cannot function if the Strait of Hormuz closes for even 60 days. Their entire existence, government budgets, electricity grids, food systems, runs on oil and gas that must pass through a 21-mile wide channel between Iran and Oman. Right now in April 2026, that channel is more fragile than it's been in decades. tensions are escalating, insurance premiums are climbing, and the world's most critical energy artery is operating on borrowed time. Nearly 21 million barrels of oil flow through Hormuz every single day. That's 1/5 of global oil consumption squeezing through a strait so narrow that ships travel in lanes just 2 miles wide. But here's what nobody talks about. When Hormuz closed, countries don't just take a hit, they cease to exist as functioning states. And the countdown has already started.
ChatGPT, can I make money online with $0?
Yes.
Iraq, the 90-day death clock. Iraq exports 3.3 million barrels of oil per day. Oil funds 90% of the government, and 100% of those exports flow through Hormuz. Here's the timeline that Iraqi officials won't say out loud. Day 1, Hormuz closes. Revenue stops immediately. Day 30, government can't pay salaries. Protests start in Baghdad. Day 60, electricity becomes sporadic. Food imports collapse. Day 90, the state is functionally insolvent. Iraq has a small pipeline to Turkey, 450,000 barrels per day. That's 14% of what they need, which means Iraq doesn't have a backup plan. It has a 90-day countdown to state failure, but at least Iraq knows it's vulnerable. The next country built an entire economy pretending it's not. Qatar. The machine that can't stop Qatar supplies 25% of the world's liquefied natural gas. Over 95% flows through Hormuz. But here's what makes Qatar different from every oil producer. LNG facilities cannot be turned off and on like a faucet. They run 24/7. The cooling systems, the compression, the liquefaction process, it's all continuous. If Hormuz closes, Qatar has exactly 30 days of storage. After that, they face a choice. Keep producing with nowhere to send it, or shut down entirely. Shutting down an LNG facility doesn't mean flipping a switch. It means dismantling production, purging systems, and mothballing infrastructure. Restarting takes 6 to 12 months and costs billions, which means if Hormuz closes for even 2 months, Qatar doesn't just lose revenue, they lose their entire industrial base. And they're making that bet every single day. But that's a slow-motion collapse. The next country doesn't get months. Kuwait. 0 hour. Kuwait produces 2.4 million barrels per day. 100% exits through Hormuz. No pipeline to the Red Sea. No alternate route. No backup infrastructure. But here's the part that makes Kuwait different. Kuwait is small in people. Almost no economic diversification. When Hormuz closes, Kuwait doesn't have time to adapt. The government has reserves, massive ones, one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds. But money in a bank account doesn't replace the fundamental problem. Kuwait cannot sell its only product. Think about what that means in practice. Month 1, government burns through cash reserves paying salaries. Month 3, imports slow, shortages begin. Month 6, the country is operating entirely on savings with no income. At some point, the math stops working. And unlike Iraq, which could fragment into regions, or Qatar, which could pivot to something else, Kuwait is a city-state built entirely on oil exports. If Hormuz closes permanently, Kuwait as a nation-state has no reason to exist. But these are all small players. The real shock is what happens to the giants. Saudi Arabia. The $500 million daily bleed, Saudi Arabia is the world's largest oil exporter. Over 9 million barrels per day. And here's what every analyst gets wrong. Yes, Saudi Arabia built the East-West pipeline. It can move 5 million barrels per day to the Red Sea, completely bypassing Hormuz. Brilliant planning, right? Except Saudi Arabia produces 9 million barrels per day. That pipeline handles just over half. The other 4 million barrels still flow through Hormuz. If the strait closes, Saudi Arabia loses $400 to $500 million per day, every single day. Now do the math on Vision 2030. NEOM. The megacities, the economic transformation, the social programs keeping the country stable, all funded by oil revenue. Saudi Arabia has financial reserves to survive a temporary closure, but temporary is doing all the work in that sentence. 3 months? Manageable? 6 months? Budgets start collapsing. A year? Vision 2030 is dead. Social spending gets cut, and the political stability that oil money bought starts unraveling. Saudi Arabia made the biggest bet of all. they assumed Hormuz would always stay open, and now they're discovering that bet might not pay off. But there's one country that makes even Saudi Arabia's situation look simple: Iran. The suicide switch. Iran sits directly on the Strait of Hormuz. It has the missiles, mines, and fast attack boats to close it, and it regularly threatens to do exactly that. But here's the paradox nobody mentions. Iran exports 1.5 to 2 million barrels per day. About 80% of government revenue comes from oil, and nearly all of it passes through Hormuz, which means the country with the most power to close the strait is also one of the most dependent on it staying open. Iran has minimal pipeline capacity to the Caspian Sea, not nearly enough to replace Hormuz. If the strait closes, whether Iran causes it or someone else does, the Iranian economy implodes within 90 days.
And see, this is what America wanted to do, because they could have, see, America wanted control of the strait. You see, remember, he's speaking from a perspective of hypothetical where we're living in it. We're seeing this play out. You see, and this is why America, if they would have had regime change, they could have got full control, okay, of the Strait of Hormuz, okay, and they could have choked out China, okay, they could have choked out, you know, if Iran wanted to be hostile, well, they could have choked out Iran, okay, but Iran has control of it. See, and it's not closed, it's open, because Iranian ships, all right, their oil is still going through, okay, which they sell 90% of their oil to China, okay, and that's why China is so hands-on with Iran, okay, because we have to understand there's actually resource wars going on. These devils are fighting. They're not sitting down, you know, drinking wine, and, you know, laughing at each other. Now, this is, it's a brawl for it all, man. Okay, so there's actually plays being made because these nations want to posture themselves, all right, because they want a seat at the table with this new world order. Okay, and this new world order is going to be governed by who has the resources, because it takes so many resources. It's going to take so much resources to power this new world order, to the point where you have data centers being canceled in America because they don't have enough power for it. Okay, this is bigger than America having enough power to sustain the right now. They need some more power to sustain what they want to do. You see, so there's actually conflict dealing with these resources. Okay, you gotta remember, Esau has a toxic relationship with these nations, man. Okay, it's not no relationships of integrity where everybody just fully honest with each other, and no, it's a lot of treachery, a lot of toxicness, man. Okay, so you see things and you kind of have to extrapolate based on the patterns of these certain events, man. Okay, well, I say with Iran having the control of the strait, okay, they're still able to ship their oil. Okay, so this isn't affecting them, but now these other nations, they're being affected, and they all on the countdown, and that the countdown that he just gave, okay, not to say that that's the exact time when but it just gives a time frame. I thought that was interesting to see, the results, just kind of see how this affects these nations, which then you got to go into the countries that they ship to. Okay, these are South Pacific Asian nations and these are European nations, so we just keep an eye on that. I thought that was interesting, just to go into that, but these things have happened, because they made this video hypothetical, speaking hypothetically, okay, but these things have already happened. Okay, so let's go here. Let's get this real quick. So I'll put that in the comment. Now let's deal with the connections behind the scenes. All right, because remember, war, politics, then we're in with prophecy. But you go here, what's happening, behind the scenes. Okay, the things that are not seen, the things that are not being reported. Okay. So let's play here. This is from I think this is little chick Whitney Webb. All right. So let's make all these connections, and then once you start making the political connections and the elites, and you see then certain wars and conflicts start to make more sense. When you see how these devils, move in the back. Okay. But all this is going to backfire on these devils, man. At the end of the day, everything that they're doing, all right, is going to backfire. Okay. So let's play this.
Is not slowing down. She dropped a major new Whitney Webb has been back on X this week, and she's not slowing down. She dropped a major new investigation from Unlimited Hangout on the Silicon Valley oligarchs, who she says are controlling the Trump administration and engineering wars to build their empire. She's also pointing to a bombshell investigation into a man sitting inside the current White House as Trump's special envoy, a man with direct ties to Epstein, Maxwell, and Ghislaine's Terramar project. And she's back on the AI summary problem, this time with a concrete example from her own work. Let's get into it. Webb shared a new 2-part investigation published on Unlimited Hangout by researcher Ian Davis. The title is The Praxian Genocidal Kill Chain. That's not clickbait. Davis is making a specific documented argument that a small group of Silicon Valley billionaires have taken control of the Trump administration and are using war, financial collapse, and AI weapon systems to break apart nations and rebuild them as private city-states they personally own and rule. New from @ in this together for Unlimited Hangout. In this 2-part article series, Ian Davis examines how a class of Silicon Valley oligarchs have set about destabilizing the planet in order to achieve their goal of a multipolar world of interconnected smart city-states. That is, a regionalized world that they and their oligarch partners will rule as neo-feudal monarchs. In Part 1, Davis focuses on the deceit this oligarch network is using to drag us all to ruin and how it is controlling the Trump administration, whilst Part 2 will focus on their neo-colonial ambitions in the Middle East.
Yeah, man. So the devils, all right, these oligarchs, okay, they want to break the world up and they want to recolonize the world digitally. Okay, they want to section off these different regions of the world digitally. All right, and then they want to rule. All right, the top, all right, super state that they want to establish is this greater Israel. Okay, so you have to factor that in. You see, these oligarchs are moving and shaking in the background. So this is a tier above what's happening, all right, in the day-to-day. Okay, they got their agendas that they want to establish. Okay, this is devil's enterprise, man. Okay, and in his mind, this third world war, all right, he's going to be able to reset the economy. Okay, he's going to be able to fracture, okay, all these nations, weaken all these nations, okay, and establish, all right, a technocracy, a global technocracy, okay, to where the earth is ran by these few oligarch families, man. Okay. All right. This is what the devil is trying to establish, man. This is his expectation of this war. Okay. But as we said, this war is going to keep escalating and it's going to go beyond, okay, what this devil wants. Okay. And it's going to begin to counsel this nigga out. You see? So let's play this.
Reddit here. The article opens by naming this group the Praxians. That name comes from Praxis Nation, a project to build what they're calling the world's first digital nation on Greenland. The people behind it include Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, Sam Altman, Palmer Luckey, Joe Lonsdale, Larry Ellison, and Mark Zuckerberg. Davis said,
and those are just the front men, those men are just, the representatives of these different oligarch families. Okay, because you won't see, the real men that are making the calls. Okay, the fact that you see these niggas lets you know that they're not in charge of anything. Okay, they're just the face, the representative of these different families that are in charge, man. Okay, and Trump is way low on the totem pole. Okay, a clown. All right, so let's play a little more.
Says they
That's the sound of an American oil company. Hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello.
They now effectively control the second Trump administration. The mechanism they used to get there was Mark Andreessen. After Trump won in 2024, Andreessen reportedly went to work vetting, recruiting, and directly placing people inside the administration. Trump's own President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, known as PCAST, ended up stacked with Praxian-aligned figures. That council has authority over economic policy, fiscal policy, national security, and any topic they choose to weigh in on. Companies represented on that council have a combined market cap of more than $12 trillion. Davis then traces the investment architecture behind all of this. It starts with Y Combinator, the world's first seed accelerator, founded in 2005. YC has been the launchpad for companies like OpenAI, and the current YC president Gary Tan was recruited by Peter Thiel before becoming Palantir's 10th employee. Sam Altman, now CEO of OpenAI, previously ran YC. Peter Thiel briefly joined the YC team in 2015. These men trained each other, invested in each other, and placed each other inside government. One of the most alarming sections covers what Davis calls the Praxian digital kill chain. Palantir CEO Alex Karp has, in public speeches, explicitly described how his company built what military operators call a kill chain, an AI system that identifies targets from any data source and tracks them for elimination. Karp has said on record that his products are, quote, used on occasion to kill people. The article documents how Palantir's systems, including platforms called Gotham and Maven.
And this is how these devils want to enforce this new world order. Okay, Palantir got this technology called kill chain, and they've been using it, and that's how they killed, so many of these Iranian leaders. Okay, using this Palantir. Okay, which this Palantir works good. Okay, when it comes to assassinations, you see, but when it comes to a full-scale war, all right, because AI doesn't work good in chaos. When you're doing assassination, that's more of a controlled environment. Okay, so they've been able to be successful, when it comes to these assassinations, you see. But when it comes to full-blown war, all right, the AI can't keep up. Okay, because there's too many things changing too quickly for it, you see. And that's why you see Americans underperforming, okay, with all this AI technology, you see. Now, these devils are still able to go forth with their agenda, okay. They're still able to go forth with their global reset, all right, but everything is not working perfectly for these devils. We can't get it confused just because this nigga is going forward with his plan that everything is working exactly how he wants it, okay? Because prophecy, he subjugated to prophecy, man. And he got to work within prophecy to try to pull this off, okay? He can't work outside of prophecy to try to do this. No, this nigga got to work within prophecy to try to pull this off, man, okay? So, this Palantir, this kill chain is going to be used on American citizens. All right. And it's going to do wonders. It's going to be, you see, because like I say, it does good. Okay. In an environment where it's destroying civilians, like in Gaza. Okay. Even in Lebanon. Okay. Where they warned against civilians, it does wonders. Okay. They kill chain because it's able to track. And you best believe that, anyone that's against this government, all right, that has been marked, going back to the red list, the yellow, the blue, okay? Well, these red list targets are going to be put into this AI, man, all right? And they're going to turn it loose. And that's going to play a part into the madman sparing none, because they got a lot of work to do in America, man. That's why it's going to get so bad in America, man, okay? Because they really need to bring the American society to its knees, you know, to present this MOTB as a solution. Okay, so let's play this.
Are deeply embedded in Israeli military operations in Gaza and now in the U.S. war with Iran. On February 28, 2026, the first day of the U.S. strike on Iran, Maven targeting data sent Tomahawk cruise missiles into a primary school in the city of Mina, killing at least 110 children. Davis cites a Military Times report showing Maven correctly identifies targets only about 60% of the time under normal conditions. In bad weather or poor visibility, that accuracy drops below 30%. A U.S. Air Force general previously described the system as, quote, confidently wrong. The article connects this back to Gaza directly. Since 2014, Palantir has been embedded in Israeli military and intelligence infrastructure. Their systems power what are called the Wolfpack and Blue Wolf databases, which hold biometric profiles, security ratings, and movement histories on millions of Palestinians. Davis argues Palantir's technology is central to what he describes as the genocide of the Palestinian people, and that the same infrastructure is now being exported through NATO under a program called Task Force Maven, which is being implemented across the entire alliance.
Apparently you can go from 0 to a complete site in just a single prompt with Wix Harmony. I don't know if this is going to be possible. Or vibe coding.
On the financial side, Davis describes how the Praxians triggered the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in March 2023, when Peter Thiel's Founders Fund pulled its money and advised clients to do the same the day before the collapse. After SVB, Signature Bank, and Silvergate all fell, the same Praxian figures launched Erebor Bank in July 2025, positioning themselves to fill the gap they helped create. Erebor received full operational approval from the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in under 3 months. Davis also covers WorldCoin, the digital currency project built out of Sam Altman's Universal Basic Income trials at YC Research. To access WorldCoin, users must submit iris scans to get their digital identity and programmable digital wallet. Webb flagged a developing story tied directly to a full Unlimited Hangout investigation she and Mark Goodwin published in August 2025. The subject is Paolo Zampoli. He is the man Donald Trump and Melania both say introduced them at a New York nightclub in 1998. He now holds the title of U.S. Special Envoy for Global Partnerships inside the current Trump administration.
So you see Trump, all right, there's nothing but a do boy for the global elites, okay? And they're, you know, these technocrats, man, okay? So this is why Trump is on the mission. Everybody, you know, cussing Trump out, you know, about the American people, and this is not good for the American people. He's not here for the American people, man. Okay, it's a technocracy, man, and the Lord got the elites, all right, foot on the gas, man, and the Lord helped pressing the gas for them, you know, because they dragging their feet a little bit. The Lord is putting their ass in gear, man, you know, to try to pull this off. Okay, because they know if they have but a short time. Okay, they know that AI is overrated. Okay, so they know they can't just keep, you know, dragging their feet. No, the Lord got them on the gas now. Okay, and that's why Trump, you know, hit the ground running. Okay, since day one. All right, from the day one, their Stargate bill, you know, $500 billion. Okay, the executive order to push $500 billion into what? AI infrastructure, man. Okay, they're building this thing out. Okay, because in order to make, you know, the C-Hill mandate, well, they gotta get to a certain point with this infrastructure, man. And they've been full throttle with this infrastructure. Okay, now they just need the events. All right, they justify making this thing mandatory. You see, now we're seeing the events that's going to happen that's going to mandate these things, man. You know? So play a little more.
Unlimited Hangout did a massive investigation on Zampoli last August. As this story develops, you may want to check it out. The investigation is 74 minutes long and it is methodical. It starts with Zampoli's origins in Milan, where he sold his family's toy company to Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian prime minister who was later convicted of serious misconduct while in office. Berlusconi was also a member of the P2 Lodge, the notorious Italian Freemasonic network that connected organized crime, intelligence agencies, and political figures. Zampoli remained a close admirer of Berlusconi until his death in 2023. From there, Zampoli entered the modeling world under the mentorship of John Casablancas, founder of Elite Model Management, a figure who became widely known for exploiting organized modeling contests in the 1990s that brought young women from around the world to Ibiza, often without adequate supervision, and exposed them to powerful men in the industry. When Zampoli moved to New York in 1995, he came into close contact with Jean-Luc Brunel, the modeling agent who was later arrested on charges of rape, trafficking, and procurement of women for Epstein. Brunel died in prison in 2022 while awaiting trial. Webb and Goodwin document that Zampoli's wife Amanda Ungaro, a Brazilian model he later married, appears on Epstein flight logs traveling with Brunel before she was of legal age. The investigation then traces Zampoli's time at the United Nations, where he worked on the Sustainable Oceans Alliance alongside Ghislaine Maxwell through her Terramar project. A UN official introduced Maxwell at a 2014 UN event hosted by the Alliance, saying she controls the oceans around the world.
And there you go, man. Okay. This is what they're doing in the background. And Trump, okay, in the White House, he's just playing his part. Okay, with the overall scheme of these elites. Okay. And this, you can go into the rabbit hole dealing with all these connections, but I just wanted to, just wanted to touch on it. You can watch the rest of it. I think I put it in there. But yeah, so we deal with, every aspect, and it all ties together with prophecy. Okay, so now let's go from there. Let's go from there. Let's get this in the book of Isaiah. All right, 29. And let's go to Isaiah 29 and 15. It says, "Woe unto them that seek deep to hide their counsel from the Lord." Okay. So these devils, have been in the background, scheming and plotting. They're always in the background, scheming and plotting, manipulating world events, causing world events, puppet leaders, and they're always doing some type of madness, man. Okay, and it's all in the attempt to establish a new world order in which they think that they can, because in their mind they're going to their agenda, their scheme is going to override prophecy. Okay. But the Lord guided to where what we're seeing in these day-to-day events that they're, that's happening, is going to override their scheme and fulfill prophecy, man. Okay. And it says, "And their works are in the dark, and they say, who seeth us and who knoweth us?" Okay. So they use all this disinformation and propaganda and all these conflicting stories and confusion because they want people to just disengage from these stories, man. Focus on something else. Okay. Or focus on things that don't matter concerning, the war. All right. As they set up a new world order. You see, because as this war is going on, okay, all these nations are constantly requiring, more digital identification, more biometrics when it comes to banking. Okay. All right. So is there pushing, a lot of this propaganda and disinformation where they're rolling this thing out to get to the point to where they're ready to cause a certain event to happen. All right. So they can really enforce and mandate these things, man. Verse 16 says, "Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed at the potter's clay." Okay. So this devil, all right, he has turned the world completely upside down. You know, this is why scriptures speak about how dark is light, light is dark. Okay, and they want to bring a satanic, okay, new world order. Okay, they want to bring a new world order directly under the authority of Satan, man. Okay, the completely opposite of righteousness, man. And that's why they throw these things out like Epstein, because they be wanting you to know what they're about, getting you familiar to what they're about. Okay, this whole this whole society is about grooming people in wickedness, man, getting people to accept wickedness, man. You know, and they think generations ahead because they know, like, cause this the generation of adults now, the little kickback that they have, they know, okay, these niggas gonna be out of here soon. Okay, they already know this generation of children that's in, that's in elementary school, they're done. Okay, this devil was to have his way, man, it'd be so freaked out. The next generation, man. But nah, man, the Lord said He's gonna steam him as a potter's clay. And if a potter doesn't like, okay, a certain vessel, what does it do? It just breaks it up. Okay, so we're seeing that with prophecy, the Lord finna break up everything. How the Lord finna break up how Esau has fashioned the earth, man. Okay, it says, "For shall the work say of him that made him, he made me not, or shall the thing framed say of him that framed him, he have no understanding." Okay, so Esau, Edom, he wants to, he's telling the world, like, look, the Most High is lacking in understanding. We're gonna upgrade the world through technology. Okay, we're gonna roll out utopia. You see, because what did he present to Eve? He made it seem as if the wisdom of the Lord was holding Eve back. Okay, the order, the law, it was holding her back. He pushed the doctrine of, nigga, we're gonna transcend. Okay, you're gonna know good and evil. You're gonna transcend. You're being restricted. You see, and this is what the devil, thinks that he's gonna do. Okay, and he's gonna be able to use this war as a platform to do it. Okay, but it's gonna be this very war that removes this nigga from power, man. Okay, and we always get it. You go to Psalms, the 2nd chapter. Okay, and we're reading the NLT. All right, so this is the book of Psalms, chapter 2, verse 1. It said, "Why are the nations so angry? Why do they waste their time with futile plans?" So all this scheming and plotting, and Esau, and another thing too, when you follow the elites, man, this shit is a hot mess. Esau really got a hot mess in the earth, man. But he walk around like he got it figured out. Esau got the earth is a hot goddamn mess, man. This shit is bad. But they're able to move around like they got it figured out, and this shit is tacky. The way this nigga runs the earth, man. Okay, extremely tacky, man. All right, verse 2, it says, "The kings," okay, said, "the kings of the earth prepare for battle. The rulers plot together against the Lord and against His anointed one." Okay, so these devils really think they're going to undermine the coming kingdom of Yahushua. They're going to have a new world order established, and then they're going to fight off Yahushua when He comes. Okay, showing you how low level the Lord got these niggas on. To think that this is even doable, that's low level. Okay, there's a low level way of thinking, man. All right, to think that they're going to fight the Son, okay, of the Heavenly Father, man, and they're going to upset prophecy, man. You see, and this is what these devils are fighting for, man. Okay, this verse 3 says, "Let us break their chains, they cry, and free ourselves from slavery to the Most High." Okay, and he thinks that he's going to be able to remove himself from being subjugated to prophecy. He thinks that he's going to free himself, okay, from the prophecies of Yahweh Bashim al-Shai. Okay, this is what we're seeing the devil attempt to pull off, man. And he's going to buckle under their weight. Okay, he said, "But the one who rules in heaven laughs, the Lord scoffs at them," man. The Lord scoffing at Esau, man. Okay, you have to understand the Lord is scoffing at the devil. He's doing it through the prophets, man. Because as we get close up on this nigga, man, this is a joke what this nigga is trying to do, man. Now this nigga, the Lord gonna allow this nigga to wreak a lot of havoc, you know. So it's serious. We in serious times, okay. But looking from the perspective of what he's trying to do and what he's trying to do with, this is laughable, man. This is a joke. Okay, that this devil was trying to replace the Most High, all right, with this weak ass technology, man. Okay, and it's weak compared to the power of the Lord. Okay, because he's able to do some things and he's made some achievements with his technology, man, but nowhere near the point to where I can replace the Most High. No, you can't. Okay, that's why it's gonna be an epic failure, man. So let's read verse 5. Said, then in anger, he rebukes them, terrifying them with his fierce fury. See, the Lord is going, all right. It's like the Lord laughing at Esau, trying to pull it off. And then, you know, the Lord done laughing. All right, and let's end this shit. You know, and this war just going to escalate. Okay. And they're just going to start breaking all this shit up Esau trying to do, man. Okay. And it says, for the Lord declares, I have placed my chosen king on the throne in Jerusalem on my holy mountain. And this Yahweh Shai. Okay. And how is he going to place his chosen king on the throne? Through war. Yahweh Shai coming to end this war. Okay. So when we look at what's happening in the war, all right, like I said, we filter out the disinformation. Okay. And we keep over what's going on according to prophecy, man. Because this prophecy is going to lead to Yahweh Shai establishing the throne of David in the earth, man. It's going to be through war. Okay? So, I'll leave it there, you know. I'll leave it there. You know, Lord will, you know, this was edifying. You know, once again, I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Hikakadash. You know, double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the whole elect. Shalom.